Meeting at Tabcorp Park, Menangle on Saturday the 12th of September. Graham Locke, the chairman. Graham, let's go through this meeting. The first event was taken out by Pasha Cutie.
Yeah, look, a very consistent horse. Obviously, he's got quality and there's still some upside there, I suspect. The disappointment of the race, Greg, was probably Christian Sloy, which was heavily supported in the market. David Morris basically blamed it on being a fast sectional, and given the tempo of the race, the horse never got a chance to relax and finish its race off. We did report that in the vicinity of the 300 metres, there's another runner got a tyre of Christian Sloy, and he's actually finished the race with a flat tyre, so that's probably dulled his effort over the final stages as well.
What about race number 2, Imaguchi Girl? Got a beautiful trip in transit.
Yeah, well driven. Look, these mares races, I guess it's all a matter of luck and running and draw in the gate. We did ask Blake Fitzpatrick, we thought we might have seen Spirit and Desire a little more forward. Blake Fitzpatrick explained that yes, he had intended to be more forward. When he got posted 3 wide, he went back to the tail, and coming to about the 500 metres, tried to flush Cameron Jones out on Revivalist. No sooner had it got him going and realised that he probably wasn't going to take him into the race, and then come back in to get on the back of Todd McCarthy. Didn't have a great deal of luck getting home. There are other horses there as well. The Empire's Sister at a vital stage got held up and hit the line quite hard at the end.
What about Montefieth winning race number 3? He looked well graded there.
Yes, probably the handicapper knows as much about that race as the rest of us, Greg. It was a matter of when and if, I guess. But in fairness, I think there were some handy runs behind it, and something, quick reflection, the Kissing Bandit all became held up and weren't fully tested.
What about Mac the Finn's race number 4? Yeah,
Positive Drive. Probably won the race. Behind him there were a couple of horses that were held up. We've reported that Perfezione, Angela's Image, Major Step all were held up. And at about the 200 metre mark, Noah Saint, a previous winner driven by Gavin Fitzpatrick, just got inconvenienced when tightened between runners.
Race number 5. Now this was taken out by Fellas of Trouble. Ellen Rickson winning her first race on a Saturday night.
Yeah, good to see, I guess. Greg, from a future perspective, a young driver getting the opportunity to drive in C-class races at Menangle. Despite the family history, I mean, there's probably a burden on Ellen from that perspective. But having said that, I think it's just an illustration that we do have a number of young, capable drivers, and if they get the opportunity, they're capable of fulfilling their potential.
All right, nothing really out of that race, race 5?
Not really, no.
What about race number 6, Birdie Mac?
Yeah, look, again, I guess the run of the race probably wins it for the horse. I'm a Grumpy Possum break at the start. He would have been obviously some competition to Birdie Mac. Miss Rock and Roll, which again looked to be disappointing, was the subject of the Harness Racing New South Wales elevated TCO2 policy, and under that policy it was required to be in the barn from 10 a.m. on the morning of the race.
All right, what about race number 7? That was taken out by Jedi Mind.
Yes, again, well, good to see Mitch Turnbull get a winner here. We did reprimand him for his use of the whip with a free hand prior to the 200, but initially I think he was 1-1, then ended up back 1-2 and got a clear run in the straight. There was a horse that did have difficulty finding clear running in the straight, was Donkey, driven by Blake Fitzpatrick. He probably is better suited to a Tuesday grade with respect to the connections, and he might be one to keep an eye on that appears on a Tuesday.
How are the drivers handling the whip and the whip rule? Is it pretty well respected by most of the drivers?
I'd like to think that the people that we see on a regular basis, Greg, more or less now have a handle on it. There's 1 or 2 of them who don't get a chance at the pointing end of the prize money frequently, that can get a little excited in a close finish. I think the people that our attention is drawn to now more frequently are the people who don't drive very often, drive their own horses, perhaps have been probably the older generation, been driving for a little while, and although they don't necessarily look to offend the rule, they lose sight of it during the running of a race, and the the cut and thrust of the final 200 metres. But generally speaking, I think our product looks a lot better than what it did when I first came here, and our incidence of penalties, I think, has commenced to decrease. Now, knowing the industry as little as I do, I don't sort of put our cue in the rack and say that's job done. But I hope it reflects where we're going with it, Greg. Yes, you might have seen that in New Zealand there's certainly some conjecture there now about whip use and whip penalties, and it's suddenly got on the front of mind as far as welfare and lobby groups are concerned.
What about the last race at Menangle on Saturday night, Edgehill?
Yeah, look, to some extent dominated the race. The stablemate, My Valerie, probably conceded too big a start. But Edgehill, well driven, positively driven, got the result. The market said it was favourite, and that's probably what it should do. And for punters, it did.
Just quickly back to the whip rule, and obviously it's hard to say what ifs, but if people here are caught tampering with whips, no doubt the body would come down heavily upon them. Absolutely.
There's only one case that's come before us at this point in time, to the best of my knowledge, was recently Mr. Johnson, and he was suspended for a period, I think it was 6 months, and I would think that could be considered to be a ballpark penalty, or at least a starting point in most instances, and where there's certainly an intent or some form of deliberation to modify the whip, the penalty could even be higher.
All right, we'll catch up with you again next week.
Thanks, Greg. A pleasure.